Okay. And then we'll be able to share screen.
Okay.
But
Do you want to speak from over there?
no, I don't want the tour. I'll help. We'll help you out. All right. So I guess we should start. We shall start. Hopefully, let's see. Oh, we have a couple more people on the Zoom today. Yeah, we have more than 1 million on Zoom, if you count women. I don't know, but anyway. Yeah. All right. So okay. So yes. Hello. Yeah. Hoo. Okay. Oh yes. Exactly. So good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov. It's great that we have gathered once more to follow the Bagel to learn some Torah. After we had a Christian bishop and a Muslim imam, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to also invite an Orthodox rabbi. We really value the plurality and diversity, let's say, of the different traditions. And I think it's no less and even more important that to build bridges between different religions is to build bridges between us and amongst us Jews. And when I came and I said to Rabbi Winston, listen, I need you to come and teach about the 8 commandments. He told me, what? In Orthodoxy, we have 10 commandments. I said, really? He said, well, yeah, let's figure it out. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Rabbi Winston is I'm kind of new to town, newish. But really, since I met Rabbi Winston, it's been so nice to see an Orthodox rabbi who is just so cool and friendly and deeply pluralistic. And really, we have some mileage together in the board of rabbis and different places. And I kind of thinking, oh, if all those Orthodox rabbis in Israel were as nice, So I'm so glad that you're here. I don't want to take too much of your time. We really want to hear about your take on the 10 Commandments, on Parashat Yitro, and take it from there. Yeah, okay. You're good? So, and we'll help you with the technicalities.
Okay. Do I have to use the microphone?
Not necessarily, because I think the reason to use the microphone is when people in the Zoom, if people are asking questions or having comments,
I see it.
So they will need the microphone.
Okay.
If your voice is loud enough, you don't have to. And
even with the cold, my voice is loud enough. Okay. So.
People on Zoom, are you hearing us without a mic right now? You are. Okay.
Okay, and then I should share the screen, yeah?
So to share the screen with the people, we do the following. We do, let's see. If we just do share screen here, and we do Windows, we will not see it because this has to be, where did we put it? Oh, here it is. So if we now we go back to the Zoom, which is here, and then let's cancel this thing. And then we do share screen, Windows, and then you can share the screen or unshare it as you please. Okay. Then the problem is then we don't see
the people.
The people on Zoom.
We do half and half?
Maybe Shoshana, do you know how to do half and half?
I could do half.
Okay, anyway.
I'm a very woke rabbi.
All right.
Can I exit out of this thing? Yeah. We're just going to teach people how to use computers today. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Zohar, for inviting me. And we do have the physical handout also, if anyone wants the physical handout as well. As Rabbi Zohar said, it really is a pleasure and an honor to have a relationship with all of the rabbis here in town, Rabbi Zohar included. It's been so great to welcome him to town and just to be able to speak in this forum. I've never had the honor of speaking at Sinai, and so to be able to speak to all of you is just really so wonderful. And for those of you who are not familiar with my speaking style, which I think is probably all of you, I'd love to just invite you to please feel free to ask questions. Feel free to speak up at any point. This is not as much of a lecture as much as it is a conversation. So please feel free to pipe in as much as you would like. The goal of today, Rabbi Zohar did ask me to speak about the Ten Commandments, and the goal of today is really trying to understand the centrality of the Ten Commandments, right? Are they actually more important than the rest of the written Torah that we have, or are they just like the same as everything else? And of course, if we were to survey the crowd, what would you say? What's more important, the Ten Commandments or the rest of the Torah? Are they equal, or are they one more than the other? What would you say? Equal. Okay. All right. Everyone says equal. Okay, so then let me ask you a question then, since you all disagree with me. So if they are if they are clearly equal, then why is it that you go around to synagogues around the world and you'll see only the Ten Commandments in the front of the synagogue, and you don't see the whole Torah written up there? Oh, a decent summary. Okay. So some people think it's a summary. Okay. Any other suggestions? Yeah. Okay, could be. Maybe the Ten Commandments represent what God wants, and then the rest of the Torah is stories. It would be a great hypothesis if the Torah was only stories, but there are many other commandments in the Torah as well, right? So why only these 10 commandments get highlighted? Yeah?
They just told me that they have to admit.
I could do it. Is this touch
I
screen?
also have two.
Not touch screen.
I also have two. I have two comments.
Yeah.
To argue with the rest of the crowd, just for the sake of argument. One, if speaking of all our previous guests, if you drive in many places around America, in the Midwest and even in New York State, you see the Ten Commandments
everywhere.
So it's not just, so one would argue that it's even universally.
Right, not even just Jews. Every religion knows the Ten Commandments.
The second comment, it was a different kind of revelation because everybody heard it, not just Moses. So two thoughts to think.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we were here and the Imam from the mosque was here, he spent a lot of time talking about Moses up on the mountain, and I asked him, is there anything about the Ten Commandments? And he said no.
Really? Interesting. That's fascinating. Okay, thank you.
Well, I thought this is, can you put me on camera? This is Lona from Maryland on Zoom. People get distracted. These are 10. They're very important. If you better pay attention. And if everyone did all these things, we'd be in great shape.
So these are it's like the bare minimum. We strive for the 10 commandments and at least that, and then the rest is commentary. You could do other things if you want, but at least let's start with these 10. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Isn't this what was written on the tablets that Moses came down with? He didn't tablets, not scrolls.
Okay, good, right? So Moses absolutely came down with these 2 tablets, and we're certainly led to believe that it was only these 10 commandments. So clearly someone thought it was more important than the rest, because this is what we're led to believe is only written on the tablets and nothing else. Okay, so as we see, there is really a great deal of confusion. On the one hand, we understand that it's very clear that the 10 commandments appear to have this highlighted importance for all of us, but at the same time, it seems like we also recognize that there is a great deal of additional scripture on top of the 10 commandments. So how do we understand and really get to the core of what this is all about? And of course, we know very famously how the 10 commandments came to be given to the Jewish people. Right, because God came to the Ishmaelites and he said, would you like to receive a commandment? And they said, okay, well, what's the commandment? And God said, well, you're not supposed to steal. And they said, oh, well, we're not so keen on that. And so we're not going to accept the commandment. And then God came to the nation of Edom and he said, would you like to receive a commandment? And they said, well, what's the commandment? And he said, well, don't kill. And Edom says, well, we like killing every now and again, so we're not going to accept it. Finally, he came to the Jewish people and he said, would you like to receive a commandment? And they said, well, how much is it? And the Jewish people and God said, it's free. And the Jewish people said, oh, we'll take 10. Right? So that's how the Jewish people came to receive the 10 commandments. And of course, Why? That's not a true story. So that's it. We're just going to end the class there. So as you see in front of you, whether it's in the handout or on the Zoom screen, sorry. Oh, thank you. Just yell at me every time. Actually, please yell at me. Okay, so we see the 10 Commandments before us, and what's most interesting is that this is not a test. No one's going to get tested over here. But if we were to be asked to name all the 10 Commandments before this morning, I'm not sure how many of us would be able to name them. And but just don't take away my ordination. I'm not sure I could always name all the 10 Commandments on a good day, or maybe on a good day, yes, on a bad day, maybe not. Right, and so we have to, number one, recognize that these are the 10 Commandments that were given to us as we believe at Sinai. And therefore, the question is, well, what do we do with them? What is it all about? Is there something deeper there, or is it really just exactly what meets the eye? And so there's several different perspectives that we have shared throughout Jewish history that seem to indicate that it's actually not the case. And as many of you did indeed say, the 10 Commandments are clearly meant to be almost a front for something else, and that they are representative of much more than just what you see in front of you. So if you take a look first at source number one, in the Jerusalem Talmud, again, feel free to look at the screen or look at your handout. So the Jerusalem Talmud, which was written or sealed in around the year 400 or 500 of the Common Era, and the rabbis basically suggest that the 10 Commandments are actually not a be-all and end-all. It's not just that we have these 10 decrees and that's it. Take a look inside. It says, how were the tablets written? Hananiah ben Achi, Rabbi Yoshua, said that between each commandment, there were letters which made up the details of the whole Torah. So amazingly, we have a very early source going back 1,600 years or so that tells us that it's true the 10 Commandments were given on the tablets, they were written, these 10 ideas, but that we know sometimes there's a fine print. Right? So all you have to do, God, is say, sign over here, don't read the terms and conditions, but the terms and conditions were there, just in a much smaller print. And so therefore, we see all the way going back 1,600 years plus, there was this recognition, a tradition, and an understanding that it was clearly much more than just these 10 Commandments. There's an additional statement that we have in source number 2, in the Medrash of Bamidbar Rabbah. So the Medrash was written in around 750 or 800 or so. And the Medrash represents a bit of a different worldview. First of all, before we even read the Medrash, we have to understand that, or if I were to ask you, survey the room, how many commandments do we have in Judaism? What might you answer? Okay, good. 613. Everyone knows, or many claim to know, that 613 commandments are the total number of commandments we have in Judaism. Is that true? Do we have only 613 commandments? It's absolutely not true. There are thousands of commandments in Judaism. Once you include the written Torah, the oral Torah, there are so many, far beyond 613. What is the number 613? Where does that come from? I'm not sure what came first, the pomegranates or the right. But we have over here the idea that some say that one of the reasons we eat pomegranates or the seeds of pomegranates on Rosh Hashanah is because there are 613 seeds. I've never counted. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they say. So where does the number 613 actually come from? So it's not total. Okay.
They're in the Torah, and it's somebody counted them.
Okay, good. So one perspective is maybe somebody counted them, but again, the problem is you go in the Torah, you count them, you'll get more than 613, right? So where does the number come from? Oh, okay, good. So we do have Maimonides going back to around the year 1100 or so, who was one of the individuals in Jewish history who counted all of the commandments that we had. But the problem with Maimonides, he's not all inclusive. He leaves out certain commandments, right? So, and there are other counts of commandments throughout the generations, and you'll have different sets. So you have 613 over here, 613 over here. You would think if there are only 613, they'd match up. They don't match up, right? So there clearly are more. So 613, where does that come from? So the rabbis tell us that this was the tradition that we received, an understanding that there were meant to be categorized 613 different commandments, understanding that there are even more than that, but 613 was sort of the nice number that they settled on. How, why exactly is the case? Not entirely clear, but that's the tradition that we had. So already we're beginning to see that all these numbers are a little bit fuzzy to begin with. Even the big 613 number that so many of us are familiar with, even that's not really an accurate count. So you start with 10, you sort of make this big leap to 613, and you say, okay, at least we're done now. Sorry, we're not done. There are far more than that. So we see already that something is going on over here that we need to understand further. So if you take a look now in source number 2, the rabbis in the Medrash tell us that there are 620 letters in the 10 commandments, which are meant to represent the 613 commandments and the 7 days of creation. This teaches that the whole world was created in the merit of the Torah, right? So it's a really cool and nice idea. It does come to a point where you start to say that we're just picking out numbers out of a hat. Like, okay, well, we have 620. All right, we can figure this out, guys. Jews are very good at math. So 613, and 7. All right, we could piece it together, right? It's a little bit random.
613 adds to 10. 613 adds to 10. So it's 613.
Oh, you want to give? That's very good. You want to come here? 613 adds to. I never even thought of it. Wow. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the bagels. Okay, so it takes a mathematician, right? So the rabbis are telling us over here, and then Rabbi Marsha is telling us as well, that all of the different numbers that we have need to be pieced together in different ways. So in particular, in the Medrash, we're told that 613 commandments plus 7, the number 7 representing the days of creation, represents the totality of the letters that were written in the 10 commandments themselves. As we see, if you, I guess, were to go into the Torah and count all of the words that make up the full 10 commandments, you'll get to the number 620. Why are we? Yes.
Well, there wasn't there 6 days of creation and then the 7th day he rested?
Yes. So yeah, it's a good point. We simply stated we clearly always view the 7 days as a one full entity, but you're 100% correct that if you want to be technical, there were only 6 days, and then the 7th day was not necessarily a creation, unless, by the way, we do say that actually the concept of rest did not exist before God invented it. And so in that way, he rested, but he also invented rest in and of itself. And so however you get to it, you do have these 7 days plus the 613 equaling a total of 6. You didn't yell at me. There's someone in the waiting room. They just showed up.
There's someone in the chat asking questions though.
Oh my gosh, the chat. Okay, we're hearing. Can you repeat what was just said? No, I can't do that. Oh, this is not okay. Okay. So you know what? Can we put this microphone and just pass it around because people aren't hearing. So when Marcia said something very profound, but you're never gonna know because you're no. Marcia said that 613. If you add those numbers together, 6 + 1 + 3 equals 10. And then I suggested that Marcia should teach the class because it sounds like a much better idea than anything I'm gonna say. Okay, right. So what we understand from this source number 2, this Medrash, is that for some reason the rabbis almost wanted to connect the giving of the Torah to the 7 days of creation, to the creation of the world. Why would they want to make that connection, right? They could have chosen 7, anything else. I don't know. There are 7, many, you go on Wikipedia and you search Jewish number 7, you'll get like 100 different things that are, represented by the number 7. Why do the rabbis want to connect the 10 commandments or the Torah with the 7 days of creation? Yeah.
Microphone.
Oh, microphone. Thank you.
That's the beginning of the Torah. That's one of the first things you do.
Okay, so the 7 days of creation are represented by the beginning of the Torah. So it makes all the sense in the world that you want to have the beginning of time, the beginning of everything, the beginning of the Torah put in connection with the Torah itself. Okay, any other thoughts? Why would the rabbis want to connect these two things? So another potential answer as to why it is that the rabbis would want to make this connection is because what they're trying to do, and theologically stated, we recognize why this would be important, is that the rabbis are trying to say the same God who created the world is also the same God who gave the Torah. So if you believe in one, then you believe in the other. If you don't believe in one, okay, then you don't have to do anything. But if you do believe in the fact that God was the creator of the world, then you believe that God is the one that gave these commandments, and therefore you'd be required to do them. So it seems like the rabbis want to link these two concepts together in order to demonstrate that they are both equally true in a sense. There is also an additional perspective that you can offer, that is to say that there is an ancient tradition that the purpose of the creation of the world was so that we would be given the Torah, so that we would be given all of the commandments. And therefore, if that's the case, well, these concepts are already intrinsically linked. We got the Torah, we fulfilled the purpose of the creation of the world. So of course, the number 613 should be linked to the 7 days of creation. Okay, with all of that said, what we really have just done so far is scratch the surface, right? We've pointed out a few very cute ideas as to what the 10 Commandments might be representing. Maybe they represent more of the Torah. Maybe they are meant to be linked to a broader picture that we have over here, but we haven't really gotten to a meaningful answer, other than Marshall's answer, which again, the best answer so far. We haven't really scratched the surface to find something that can give us something to take home, something a lot more meaningful. So there are a few additional sources that are worthwhile pointing out, and don't be afraid. There's a lot of text here. We'll only read it twice, so don't worry about it. So in source number 3, we have a statement from Rabbi Yosef Albo in his Sefer HaIkarim. So Rabbi Yosef Albo was a medieval commentator. He is very famous because certainly in Orthodox Judaism, we believe that there are 13 primary tenets of faith. Maimonides is the one who suggested them, but Rabbi Yosef Albo actually said, no, there are only 3 tenets of faith, sort of more summarized of the 13. And he's a fantastical commentator and rabbi. He has much to offer in terms of the perspectives that he has given. And unfortunately, just because of how history sometimes works out, his name is not as well known as some of the others like Maimonides. But take a look at what he says. I think what you'll find is that the idea that he shares is a pretty well-known idea to many of us. Okay, source number 3. Inasmuch as the divine law is a rule and a guide for the human race emanating from God, it necessarily points to a bond and a union between God, who is the author of the commands, and man, who is the subject of them. Hence, it is clear from this aspect that hearing a command from God necessarily proves that there is such a thing as prophetic inspiration, divine revelation, and that there is a God who is the author of the law and who exercises providence. This is especially true when one hears the first 2 commandments of the Decalogue, for they denote essentially these 3 dogmas, as we explained before. Nevertheless, God desired to let Israel hear from his mouth the 10 commandments, so as to indicate all those duties which a man becomes liable to by reason of this bond between God and him, both from the point of view of the master, who is the author of the command, and from the point of view of the servant, who is the subject. For this reason, they were expressed in 2 separate tablets, to indicate that these 2 aspects are different from each other. Those 5 which have reference to God, the master, are in one tablet, while the 5 which concern specially man, who is the servant, are in the other tablet, to show that both are necessary for the attainment of human perfection. Right? Said simply, Rabbi Yosef Albo explains, is that if you look at the first 5 commandments in comparison to the second 5 commandments, one is under the category of mitzvot, of commandments that apply between us and God, and the second represents 5 commandments that apply between us and our fellow man. Right? So, for example, the first commandment is to believe that there is a God, and the first in the second set is, let's go back, let's see. We don't know the 10 commandments yet. Right? Don't murder people, right? So clearly we have one that's connecting us to God and one that's connecting us more to our fellow man. And therefore, what we have over here is we see that Rabbi Albo was trying to justify or explain why the 10 commandments were more important than everything else, and not, God forbid. What happened? What did I do? The 11th commandment. So what we find over here is that Rabbi Albo is basically trying to justify and explain why the Ten Commandments are, in a sense, more important. Not that they actually are, but what makes them so special is that they represent different categories. Tablet 1 is about mitzvot between us and God. Tablet 2 is about mitzvot between us and man. And essentially, it's just the headers, in a sense, right? You have 5 general categories here, 5 general categories over here, and that's the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. The rest comes after that. And so they are important in that they represent the beginning of this whole concept, this whole area of thought. What do we think about that? Yeah.
It's deviating slightly. You can tell me if this is too much
Please.
tangent. One of the interesting things that happened some months ago in Torah study was we covered the second version of the Ten Commandments, which list different things in a different order. And I was wondering how that tied into this one.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question, right? So we have 2 excerpts of the Ten Commandments. One is in Parshat Yitro, that is typically read on this upcoming Shabbat. And then we have in Parshat V'etchanan, comes way later in the year during the summertime. And they are definitely different. They're not that different. If you put them side by side, you'll certainly notice that there are a number of differences between them. But I would say that they are similar enough in that if you want to say that they represent these broad categories, well, they equally represent, I would say, the broad categories. That would be the simple answer, but we have to look at them more side by side to give a more detailed response. But fantastic point. So with that said, we now understand that there is a larger perspective being represented over here that we're going to get to. And we're going to continue going down this rabbit hole, in a sense, and trying to find additional ideas, additional perspectives that link the Ten Commandments to a much broader worldview than what we have been led to believe. And that it's not just these 10, but that these 10 are meant to represent far more than meets the eye. There is a statement in source number 4, but I don't want to read too much text. So let's skip ahead to source number 5. Yeah.
Okay. So is the Ten Commandments, like thou shalt not kill, is that just within their own tribe? Because obviously throughout the Torah, we're killing people. So is it God said thou shalt not kill your own people?
It's a fantastic question.
Like that.
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
One of the things that always struck me once I actually started learning what the Ten Commandments was, is it doesn't say you shall not kill. It says you shall not murder. Totally different thing. Killing in war is not murder. Killing for self-defense is not murder. So it's that's been a thing that always struck me as a really key bit that tends to get lost into translation in the English.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point, but to make the question stronger, and don't go by the translations here. This is my translations; they're not good. But to make the question stronger is that just this past Shabbat, right? We read in Parshat Bashalach at the very end, we talk about the very famous nation of Amalek. Right, Amalek we don't like very much, right? And in fact, we hate them so much that we are commanded to kill them no matter what, right? Meaning that as far as killing other nations, as far as killing other peoples, certainly within our own nation, all of that is generally prohibited. We can't just go out and kill people. That's certainly not allowed. Self-defense, absolutely, but beyond that, no. Except for the nation of Amalek. The nation of Amalek, the Torah says very clearly that you have to kill them. In fact, there's even a story that we have in the prophets with King Saul, that King Saul was told to wipe out the entire local nation of Amalek. And the thought was that if he could wipe every single one of them out, and it was not just the men, it was men, women, children, and animals. If he could wipe all of them out, then we would be done with Amalek forever. And the way the story is told is that he killed everyone except for he left a few animals alive. And the prophet Samuel was furious with him. And so was God, because he didn't kill enough of them. Right. So clearly, we do have this very contradictory reality here. We have the commandment, don't just go kill people. Don't just go kill things. Right. But at the same time, we are being told to kill Amalek. It's a fantastic theological question. Yeah.
Well, like, okay, so you said that God was furious that they didn't kill
Yeah.
everybody, but yet when you get to the story where they were crossing the sea,
Mhm.
God wept that those
Yep.
died. So
Yep.
isn't God a little contradictory?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a really, really,
It's very confusing then.
it's a fantastic question. It's for that reason that many commentators, certainly from the medieval times and on, started saying that the commandment to kill Amalek can't just speak to the idea that we want to murder people mindlessly. There are, in fact, every one of the traditional commentators will tell you that if you can absolutely be sure that someone is from Amalek, that you should kill them. And that is a very theologically concerning commandment. Doesn't mean that we don't believe it necessarily, but it's certainly troubling. But because it was so troubling, many commentators tried to reinterpret the commandment. And so there are some commentators who will tell you that no, it's not actually meant to murder someone else. The whole goal of the commandment is to teach you that we want to destroy pure evil. And as far as the Torah is concerned, Amalek was pure evil. But as far as we're concerned, pure evil is not some little child who did nothing wrong. Pure evil is either those evil individuals in the world who are wreaking havoc and who are doing terrible things. But some more Hasidic commentators will tell you that sometimes the pure evil comes from within. Right, the idea of the evil inclination is certainly one that is spoken about extensively, and that we all have that inner evil, that inner demon, in a sense, that sometimes makes us do bad things, makes us think badly about ourselves and the like. And so there are those who say that that's actually what the commandment of killing Amalek is all about, ridding ourselves of that inner evil, that inner demon. And it's clear that they are speaking to this concern that it doesn't make sense how, on the one hand, God is telling us that murder is terrible, or on the other hand, he seems to be embracing it. And so that's one way that people deal with it. But it's a really, I don't want to downplay, it's one of these questions that is better than the answer, right? And it's a really, really concerning question that we should always be struggling over. But that's one perspective. Yeah. Okay, so with that said, we now understand a few different things. We understand that the Ten Commandments clearly are not just meant to be seen as the Ten Commandments, but more than that, what we really have to struggle with is what's this all about? Like, what was the point of summarizing them or synopsizing them into 10 commandments, right? Either give us the Torah or don't give us the Torah. But why give us these 10 headlines, in a sense, to make it as if, in case you don't get to the rest, here are the top 10 that you should keep. What's that about? How do we make sense of it? And in fact, Rabbi Norman Lamb, in source number 5, who was a really fantastic figure, he passed away during COVID, unfortunately, he was formerly the president of Yeshiva University, the place where I received my rabbinic ordination from, and also a pulpit rabbi in a very big synagogue, the Jewish Center on the west side in Manhattan. And he deeply struggled with the function of the Ten Commandments, in that maybe the messaging is all wrong to begin with. Take a look at what he says. It's pretty harsh. I'm just going to warn you. The answer is that the Decalogue, as such as it is communally understood, is too simple a formula. There is something mighty suspicious about 10 easy rules to this complex business of life. The traditional Jew, perhaps because of his tradition, or because of his background in scholarship, or because of his grasp of reality, is keenly aware of the fallacies of oversimplification, of its tragically disappointing results, and even its heretical consequences. Life is a harsh, intricate, complicated affair, and 10 rules alone, and by themselves, are hardly sufficient to solve all its formidable problems. And in our age, my friends, is distinguished by precisely this malady of oversimplification. Ours is an age where attempts are made to solve all knotty moral problems and ethical questions by a few easy steps, by a rule of thumb. Right? So Rabbi Lamb, what he's doing over here is he's saying, why would God ever try to create an oversimplification of the broader Torah, saying that we can summarize it all in 10 commandments? What's the point of that? We're the people of the book. We're always striving to say that there's always much more to read, always much more to see, always much more to look into. So why say, just look at the headline, you don't have to look at anything else? Why would anyone create a model like that? And if, yeah.
Right, I'd like to say something. This is Lona
Yes,
in
please.
Maryland. I think
Yeah.
context would be nice here, that after these 10 commandments are given, Moses comes down the mountain, and what does he find? The golden calf.
Yeah. Okay. And why does that context?
Well,
Why is
that
that
to me, I
relevant?
think it's that the rabbi you read, he knows, no doubt he knows the context, which is that the commandments are given, and right away they don't even make a delivery. What's downstairs is a golden calf.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, and therefore.
And therefore life is much more complicated, just like
Okay, good, right, 100%. Yeah, and it's unbelievable that even with the oversimplification, we're still not figuring it out. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I went to Hebrew school in an Orthodox, so what I was taught as a child in an Orthodox synagogue was that God gave us the Torah and the Ten Commandments at the same time. Since then, my feelings have been that they weren't given at the same time, but we were not a religion at Mount Sinai. We were just Hebrews who left Egypt. The Ten Commandments started us as a religion. So you needed a basis for starting that religion, okay, which started as a cult, with Moses as the leader of the cult. And that's why we have 10 Commandments as the beginning of the religion.
You need a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to answer your question, Rabbi Lamb, by saying if you lived in a society where all those 10 Commandments were really followed, everything else would follow. Okay, you would be in a society of people who respected each other and lived a life that probably would include following many of the other commandments.
So can I just push back on that a little bit?
Of course.
You really think that if everyone followed the 10 Commandments really well, that we'd be pretty smooth sailing from there?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, so
what I say is a community or an individual who follows those 10 probably is going to have other virtues.
so you're saying if you're principled enough to follow these 10, if you're not killing someone, hopefully you follow the other laws as well. Okay. Anyone agree or disagree with that? Just curious.
Just specifically, the first ones that immediately came to mind were kosher rules and the prohibitions on wearing mixed fibers. And I gotta admit, I don't see any of those following from the 10 Commandments. So
yeah. Okay.
Some may follow. I don't think all do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in both of these points. But on the one hand, one can say that what these do is represent a lifestyle choice, that you are going to follow the order of law. And so even if the other commandments are not there explicitly, well, you'll be more attuned to them in a sense if you're listening to these 10, whereas the other perspective might be, well, come on. I understand. I buy very much so into the idea of I don't want to kill anyone, but you tell me I can't wear wool and linen together. That's where you lose me. I'm not totally sure why that should work together. So both are good points. So with this said, as much as we have the understanding, at least from Rabbi Lamb's perspective, that we don't want to try to create a synopsis, a headline, a one-liner of what the Torah is all about, the problem with saying that is that seems to contradict a very famous story in the Talmud. Take a look at source number 6. I'm sure many of us are familiar with it, even if we didn't know that it came from the Talmud. There was another incident involving one Gentile who came before Shammai and said to Shammai, convert me on one condition, that you teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot. Shammai pushed him away with the builder's cubit in his hand. This was a common measuring stick, and Shammai was a builder by trade, right? So Shammai was approached by someone who was a Gentile who wanted to convert to Judaism. Only one thing, Rabbi, I need to know the whole Torah. I got 10 minutes. Teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one foot. And Shammai pushes him away. That's ridiculous. We don't believe in teaching the whole Torah in 30 seconds or less. Get out of here. The problem is that Hillel disagreed with Shammai. The same Gentile came before Hillel. He converted him and said to him, that which is hateful to you, do not do to another. That is the entire Torah. And the rest is its interpretation. Go study. So Hillel says what? Someone summarize what Hillel says. I don't fully understand what he said. Can someone summarize it for me?
Be nice.
Don't do to others what you don't want done to you.
Okay, so we got be nice. Don't do to others what you don't want done to you. Anyone else want to try to take a crack at what he's saying? Because
The golden rule.
It's upside down. It's in the negative as opposed to the positive.
okay. Right. So what's the positive?
Positive, do unto others as you would have them do it to you.
Okay, good. Right. Very famously, we have the commandment that's written in the Torah: "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." You should love your friend like you love yourself. This is the opposite of that. Where does Hillel get this from? I mean, we understand conceptually where it comes from. He just flipped the idea around. But why is he so negative? I don't know. Be a little more positive. Where does he get this from?
Well, because the Ten Commandments are mostly negative, not always. Like they say, honor your mother and father, not don't be nasty to your mom and dad. So, but mostly they say things negative.
Don't kill, don't steal.
Don't kill, don't steal.
Okay, so we don't have much time left. So fantastic point. We don't have much time left, so we're not going to read source number 7, which is a little bit longer, but we'll say it outside. So Rabbi David Foreman, who's a fantastic modern scholar, he lives down in New York. And again, feel free to take a look at number 7, but I'm just going to do it outside. Essentially, he has this theory that the 10 Commandments can actually be synopsized in the words that Hillel himself is saying. And he argues that it could be that Hillel gets his line from the 10 Commandments. And if you take a look, not at source number 7, but at the very end, there's a colorful picture, which is much easier to read. Unless it was scanned in, then not as easy. So what he does over here, and we'll just go through this picture briefly, essentially what he says is that you have tablet 1 and tablet 2. And he asks the question, why couldn't they all just be on one tablet? And he makes a joke. He says, I don't know, we've all done this. You minimize it to like font size number 10, right? Then you can fit it all on the same tablet. Why does it have to be 2 tablets? So he suggests maybe because these are almost meant to be mirror images of each other. And that he says if that's the case, then maybe you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and each line is a parallel, a mirror image of itself. In other words, that there is essentially one central theme that connects 1, 6, 2, 7, etc. And he points out what these might be. He says maybe the idea of not murdering and believing in God is a general, all-encompassing concept of don't do away with others, right? You could either do away with God, looking up, do away with God, or you could do away with those who are around you. We have a very easy way to do away with those who are around us. You just kill them. We have a very easy way to do away with God too. Just don't believe. And easily you get rid of all of it. And he does that for the rest of the 10 Commandments as well. But then he says, if this is true, that there are basically 5 all-encompassing themes, maybe it's meant to be summarized even further. And he says that's exactly what the statement of Hillel is. The idea of Hillel is don't do to someone else, don't be hateful to someone else in the same way that you wouldn't want that hate coming back at you. And it could be that Hillel was taking a line or a note from the 10 Commandments and saying it must be that God was trying to send us a message over here. It's true. There is a massive Torah out there. You can spend your entire life studying Torah and you still won't get it all. You still won't be able to internalize it all. But what you could do is understand the brass tacks, understand the basic facts. And when this person, who clearly was a searching individual looking for Judaism and says, Hillel, convert me, notice what he did. First, he converts the guy without teaching him anything. And then he says, here's the whole Torah. The whole Torah is a synopsis of the 10 Commandments, which are a synopsis of the 613. And the 613 are a synopsis of everything else. Teaching that it's true that you can't learn everything in one sentence on one foot, but you can get a start at it. You can get the general idea. And if you get the general idea and that sounds attractive, interesting, compelling enough to you, then I bet you'll keep learning. And essentially, when you teach this, not being hateful to others shouldn't be just like that. You don't want that hate coming back to you. That's attractive. And then you expound on that more and you learn more. And so what Hillel was teaching this young individual who was converting to Judaism was that this is going to be a lifelong process. Anyone who ever tries to tell you that you can teach Judaism in a couple of months or a brief course, Judaism 101, not true. Can never happen. If you're committing to this, I'm going to teach you the basic facts, and it's a one-liner, but realize that this is going to be something you're trying to study and further understand for the rest of your life. And so what we see, therefore, is that this may be the goal of the Ten Commandments, to help others understand that this is just the beginning of a very, very long journey of accepting nationhood, of accepting being part of the Jewish people. And with that, I want to share one final source that I think is actually, historically speaking, perhaps the most compelling of all of these perspectives. And that is from Rabbi Yitzchak Et Shalom, who is another wonderful scholar who lives out in LA. And essentially what he says is that if anyone just looks at historically what we believe happened at the giving of the Torah, then you really shouldn't have to question so much why it is that we only have 10 commandments, why we have these 10 headlines. Take a look inside. If we look at the verse, source number 8, if we look at the verses immediately following the Decalogue, we see that the Israelites could not take the intense experience of direct divine revelation and asked Moses to go up to God to get the rest of the Torah and relay it to them. When all the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the sound of the trumpet and the mountains smoking, they were afraid and trembled and stood at a distance and said to Moses, "You speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid, for God has come only to test you and to put the fear of him upon you so that you do not sin." Then the people stood at a distance while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. In other words, the original plan was for the people to hear more than just these Aseret HaDibro, these 10 commandments. Whether they should have heard the entire Torah or just the rest of the book of the covenant is unclear. What is implicit in these verses is that it was the people's fear that interrupted the revelation and quote unquote changed the rules, such that Moses would receive the rest of the revelation alone and transmit it to the people. And this would explain an interesting switch in terminology in the Torah relating to the tablets. Whereas they are called the Luchot HaBrit, the tablets of the covenant in one section of Deuteronomy, they have a different name in reference to their placement in the tabernacle. You shall put into the ark the Edut, the testimony that I shall give you. These tablets are called Edut, testimony, because they testify to the revelation. In other words, these Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 commandments, were not committed to graphic representation on the tablets because of their inherent importance, but rather as a testimony to the revelation which every member of the Israelites had experienced. Had the Israelites withstood the fear and heard more of the Torah directly from God, perhaps the whole Torah would have been given in stone by the hand of God, or perhaps none would have been carved. There would be no need for a physical representation of the revelation, whose purpose may be to validate the rest of the Moses-only revelation. If all of the Torah had been given directly to the Israelites, this we will never know. One conclusion we can draw from this is that instead of viewing the Aseret HaDibrot as categories or an outline of the Torah, we may view them as the first 10 statements to be given to the Bnei Yisrael, to the Jewish people. In other words, instead of seeing the Decalogue as the 10 chapter headings of the covenant, let's assess them as the first 10 pages of that covenant. And what's so interesting that Rabbi Et Shalom is pointing out over here, oh, it's a little bit late now.
They left and came
So what Rabbi will tell them that I gave all the life secrets while they were gone. And so essentially what we come to understand over here from this piece from Rabbi Et Shalom is we have this broad and deep understanding of what the Aseret HaDibrot, these 10 commandments are all about, is that, I'm going to make a confession here. When I was in high school, this was before a time that I liked reading, so I never actually read the books that I was assigned. What I would do is I would always read the first few pages, and I would sound so intelligent because I was talking about the first major theme that the author wrote about, and then the rest, whatever. The rest of the teacher never asked. They went on to, I always made sure to raise my hand first. And then everyone my teacher was very impressed by it. But you read the first 10 pages, you could sound very smart. And so what Rabbi Echelon is pointing out is essentially that is what the Aseret HaDibrot are. It's really just the beginning. It's not a synopsis. It's just actually the beginning of so much more to come. Why don't we have the rest in this 10 commandment format? Well, it's because the Jewish people said to Moses, we can't take this revelation anymore. We can't take this meeting with the divine, right? One of the more interesting elements that Judaism differentiates on with every other religion is that every other religion, and I'm not a master of all other religions, but my general understanding is that most other religions, they have an encounter between the divine and one person. Judaism is different in that it started as an encounter with the divine and the entire nation. And only after it was too overwhelming do the Jewish people say, no, we can't take it. Please go speak to Moses. And it's clear that that's the model that every other religion bases themselves on. But they forget the first part, that there was a revelation to everyone at first. But Rabbi Echelon is saying over here is that it's clear that this is the beginning of a much longer story. And so to zoom out and take a sort of global review of everything we've seen so far, we understand that the 10 commandments are very important, certainly historically, and of course, societally, right? This is a very clear, important concept that applies not just to our religion, but to so much of the Western world, that as much as so much of the West has tried to move away from religion, the 10 commandments still are known as an important concept. But we see that as Jews, while we value the 10 commandments, we don't just value these 10 commandments more than everything else, but rather it's more about what they represent. And for one perspective, it's because they represent the idea that we can synopsize the Torah, summarize it into smaller and smaller parts, realizing that we're going to spend our entire life learning this text and being encountering with the great traditions that we have. And from another perspective, it's that a similar idea that it's about introducing us to the text, but that it's really just the beginning. And once you start reading the first 10 pages, hopefully you won't be like Rabbi Winston in 10th grade, and you'll read page 11 and keep going. But we understand as a result of it that the 10 commandments, as far as the Jewish theology and perspective is concerned, is that these are not the be-all and end-all. They are not everything. They are not, if you get these right, then you'll be good. It's that these are here to start that conversation. And it's so important to have that conversation starter because there are so many elements of Judaism, so many elements, frankly, of any religion that are always going to be difficult to palate. Right? There's a family in my shul who they are just beginning to become closer to Orthodox Judaism. And there are so many things they buy into and so many things I haven't, no indoctrination. They came to me, they're interested in these things. But then there's, 10% of things that they struggle with. And what I told them was that sometimes you accept the whole package because you accept a great deal of it, right? So when it comes to the 10 commandments, these are such basic tenets that most of us could easily buy into. And there's an understanding that there might be additional things that you struggle with, but that's okay. As long as you are struggling with it, as long as you are encountering it and confronting with it. Judaism believes in constantly being in conflict and struggling with our text or tradition, as opposed to other ideas out there that say you don't like it, just throw it out. We believe in fighting back, in challenging, but we believe in having that back and forth. And that's really what the 10 Commandments is all about, showing us these major principles. And with that, the rest is commentary, and you can learn the rest of the Torah on your own. And I thank you all for being a part of this conversation this morning, and thank you for having me. I'm not going over.
Unless you have to go.
No, please.
First of all, we have a couple more minutes. Oh, yeah. Our own rules, right? So, first of all, you have a couple more minutes. Is there any more questions to Rabbi Winston?
I answered them.
Anyone? Okay. So, in that surprising case, okay, there you
go. This is a throwback to the very beginning question of, was the 10 Commandments the most important bit, or do we, consider them equal to the rest of the Torah? And one interesting thing that I know of, I cannot say it in Hebrew, I'm so sorry, the principle of life before all else, which is that you can throw almost every single one of the 613 or however many there are commandments out the window in the name of saving someone's life. And the three big ones that you can never ever break is no worshiping other gods, no incest, and no murder, which sort of implies that those three are actually more important than the rest of the 10 commandments.
Yeah.
So there's more than.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And in fact, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. So basically, we, as a general rule, believe that we must save any other human life, no matter what, even if it requires breaking any of the commandments, except for three, what the rabbis typically refer to as the big three. Don't kill, don't do any sort of illicit relationships, and don't kill. Right, and so.
Don't kill twice.
All right, don't do idol worship. Thank you. And so the big question is, why are these three so important to not break, so that even if you have a life or death situation, you should choose death over life? And how do they sort of factor into the 10 commandments? Are they more important? So the simplest answer is, and again, I'm just going to give the simple answer right now, is that these three commandments seem to represent for the rabbis that if you violate these, then you just don't deserve to live for the following reason. If you break each one down, then you can see that the way you look at life is not looking for the word. The way you look at life is clearly not valuable. In other words, let's look at the don't kill situation, because that's, I think, the clearest one. If you're going to say that I have to kill someone else to save my life, for example, that would be just a total adulteration of what the commandments are all about. So the rabbis say, better that you should accept the death penalty yourself than harm someone else, because at the end of the day, you're going to essentially be manipulating what the Torah is representing. And so that's the simple answer, but it is a much deeper study. And in fact, I had one more point. There are two categories that the rabbis talk about these three commandments in. There is one, they say you should die instead of violating them, but then there's the whole what if category, that if you didn't do that, how do you atone for not doing that, because of the fact that so many people do not necessarily keep those that rule. Oh, yeah.
So what? Okay, so then. What about abortion? Because abortion is killing.
Yeah.
And it is wrong. I can believe that.
No.
Okay. So without.
That's okay. You can say no, but I am asking a question, and that's okay. You can have your opinion, but
you're expressing one.
No, I'm not. Okay, yeah, I did for a brief second, but you can also, let me ask the question.
Okay, so thank you both. I personally don't believe abortion is a controversial topic. Judaism is very clear. There are certain times where we do allow for abortion, certain times where we don't allow for abortion. There is actually no blanket statement or perspective in Jewish law. And the reason why that is because we always have competing values, right? The one thing that Judaism does struggle with is the idea that if someone just wants to do it, just, hey, that theoretically could be problematic, but it's a much grayer area in Judaism than many people bring it out to be. So I'll just say that. Yeah.
I've always struggled with the first line of the second commandment.
Yeah.
And whether or not you shall have no other gods before me validates the fact that there are other gods.
It's a fantastic question. So there's a general principle that our rabbis tell us, which is that the Torah was given to us in a language that we can internalize it with. In other words, if the Torah was given nowadays for the first time, it would be written in a far different way than it was written originally. It doesn't take away from the eternality of the text, which is certainly with Orthodox theology. But what it does is that it explains that the Torah was written in a way that is most palatable for us. Judaism does not believe in other gods. Judaism knows that there are others who believe in other gods, and so it's given to the people. If this was given to angels, it may have said something differently. But the point is that it was given to the people, and we know that you will encounter other people who say you believe in gods. You will encounter maybe people among you who do believe in other gods. What we're saying is, don't believe in those other gods. Are they real gods? No, it's lowercase g. But at the end of the day, don't believe in them and only follow the one true God. That's the way to answer it. But ultimately, the language is, of course, critically important, but it was given in a way that we can understand it the best. Yeah.
Our Torah study group studies the Torah very slowly and in very great detail. And we just went through the penalties for a priest's daughter for committing adultery, which is burning at the stake, or other women for doing things, which is you have to determine whether it's stoning. So my question is, we talk about no murder, but why are these exceptions allowable under the rules of the Torah? The way you treat people for doing these things.
Yeah. All right. So essentially, the question is, why do we allow the death penalty in Judaism? Right.
Well, this is beyond the death penalty.
Why?
Burning a woman at the stake because the father's a priest and she's done something that is embarrassed the father is, there are different levels of death penalty.
Yeah. So, okay, I have two things to say. The first is that I once read, I went for a master's in biblical studies a number of years ago, and it was a more academic approach to the traditional text and the traditional way that I had learned it in the past. And I read this amazing essay that was written, which, and again, I mostly just read the headline, but the title of it was why biblical war was so much more gruesome than modern war. Right. And if you look in the Bible, you look throughout all of Scripture, there are wars that were like, I mean, they make the Nazis and sometimes look like angels. People were ripping open women who were pregnant, ripping open their bellies and tearing babies out, like really sick things. And so what the essay tried to understand is, what was wrong with these people, right? And essentially what the essay concludes is that there is a relativism in morality, right? There are different times that morals do change, right? In other words, murder, we agree, is bad. Warfare, generally, we agree, is bad. But how you kill, how you do something, that's really subject to the society you're living in, right? And so ultimately, back in the day, burning someone at the stake, that was sort of one of the ways it was done. Doesn't make it, please, this is not an endorsement of it by any stretch of the imagination, but murder was done differently. Death penalties were done differently back in the day. They didn't have an injection to give people, which, by the way, there are many who will tell you the injection is not particularly moral. But so essentially, there is a moral relativism that I think applies over time. I'll say that just simply. The other perspective that I'll offer is that the rabbis have a general rule that any beit in any court that kills someone, gives someone the death penalty more than once every 70 years was considered a bloody beit din, because the notion that we have the death penalty is really sort of reserved for like the worst of the worst of the worst, like real evil incarnate. But it should not be given more. If it was, then they were criticized by the rabbis. And so even though we accept it as like a last resort for some really serious situation, it's not something that we believe in on a regular basis at all.
There was one comment on the chat. Maybe it's worth checking it out. By Laura Checo, I believe.
Connecting the abortion question with the context of the conversation, it was my understanding that Jewish law says to protect the woman's life over the concept of the possibility of the fetus's life. Protecting the actual living woman's life, first and foremost, is a different perspective than religions and that focus solely on the potential life of the fetus. This is very important considering the high level of maternal mortality in this and almost all countries. Absolutely. So Judaism does really, without answering it on one foot, Judaism really does have a I'll say it like this. Judaism looks at abortion in a very gray way. It's in the sense that it's been put on billboards around that, it's very black and white. Abortion is murder. That is definitely not what Judaism thinks. Judaism believes that there is a time that it could be allowed and a time that it couldn't be allowed. The times that it could be allowed are times when the woman's life is at risk. In particular, there are very famous Mishnahs that talk about, which the Mishnah is sort of one of the first writings of the oral Torah. And what the Mishnah says is that if you have a fetus that is seeking to kill the mother, then you are allowed to abort the fetus. Now, how to define that is not entirely clear, which of course opens us up to wonderful disputes with one another. But yeah, it's very gray in Judaism. It's not black and white. Yeah.
Allowed or mandate?
Microphone.
That'll be the last comment. And then I'll just wrap it up.
Abortion allowed or mandate. There are times where theoretically it could be even mandated.
Yeah, so first of all, wait a second. So, you're not allowed to clap for Torah, for words of Torah. So we won't clap to you, Rabbi Winston, but I think we all share. I'll speak for myself. I tremendously enjoyed listening to you, learning from you this Sunday morning, and just strengthens my thesis, or our thesis, not mine, that when we open our sanctuary to more rabbis, more people who know things, from other synagogues.
I never said I know things.
People who read the first 10 pages of each book and sound extremely smart when they talk to us, right? And we should really get more of those here. So really, I think we learned so much. And again, once again, when we speak about our identity, about our joint journey, I think that it's so important that we reach out to one another as different denomination within Judaism. For reason number A is because we are living in difficult times and the Jewish people have to come together. It's no joke. And we got to kind of work together on some issues that are, around us. And B, from a positive reason, it's just very nice and cool and refreshing to get different perspectives and to just, if I made a compilation of the Ten Commandments interpretation, there would be probably 10 other texts, not these, right? So it's really, we learn a lot when we get together, and this really expands on deepens our knowledge. I'm going to ask your permission to end this with a poem about the Ten Commandments. Before that, I'll just say that first of all, we're still collecting donations. Rabbi Orzor has micro donation philanthropic endeavors. For this semester, there's 115 Holocaust survivors in Rochester, and we're trying to collect money to the Temple Sinai could provide for them Passover kits. So by the coffee machine over there, there's still those pieces of paper where you can take one and scan it to your phone, and you can make a micro donation, or not so micro, as much as you want, actually, for those people. That Holocaust survivors are not going to live forever. Most of them are very, very old, and if you really want to make that particular mitzvah, then this year, the next couple of years, that's your last chance, probably, right? So it's over there by the coffee machine. Take one if you haven't done so already. The other one is that Rabbi Jan Katz will be the next speaker at Holo the Bagel. However, our very own, as we should say. However, the next Holo the Bagel lecture is in March, because we're going into winter break now. So no bagels for 2 weeks, or no holes at least, no bagels for 2 weeks. She'll be teaching about Elie Wiesel, and remembrance in the context of Shabbat Zechor and Amalek that you were talking about. So tune in. And unfortunately, her lecture was omitted in the flyer that was sent to everybody. That flyer was made when there was only one person in the office. It was a few mistakes have been made. We're glad that we were able to send it. We apologize for the mistakes in the flyer. One of them is that her lecture was omitted. So even though it's not in the flyer, it's still happening. And we will send a revised reminder over the mail. Okay, now for Yehuda Amichai, maybe some of you heard the name before, a contemporary Israeli poet. He passed away a few years ago, but his poetry is still very poignant. He wrote a poem called The Ten Commandments. So maybe we can end with that to kind of echo all the wisdom that we've learned about in the room today. There we go. He says, "My father was God,
and didn't know it. And my father was God and didn't know it. He gave me the 10 Commandments, not in thunder and not in anger, not in fire and not in a cloud, but gently and with love. He added caresses and tender words. Would you and please, and chanted, remember and keep. With the same tune, and pleaded and wept quietly between one commandment and the next. Thou shalt not take the name of thy Lord in vain. Shalt not take, not in vain. Please don't bear false witness against your neighbor. And he hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, Thou shalt not steal, shalt not commit adultery, shalt not kill. And he laid the palms of his wide open hands on my head with a Yom Kippur blessing, honor, love, that thy days may be long upon this earth. And the voice of my father, white as his hair. Then he turned his face to me one last time, as on the day he died in my arms, and said, I would like to add 2 more commandments. The 11th commandment, thou shalt not change. And the 12th commandment, thou shalt change. You will change. Thus spoke my father, and he turned and walked away, and disappeared into his strange distances. So, thank you once again, Rabbi Winston. Hopefully you'll come back someday.
Good morning.
Maybe I'm kind of foreseeing I want to plant a seed of a joint study tour between our communities, maybe even.
Love it.
To think about it and to do that, and maybe we all have a wonderful Super Bowl. What time is Super Bowl today, Herb?
At 5:30, we start the Super Bowl party.
Right here in this room, right?
And actually, I call in and they will hold up the Super Bowl until we finish our snacks.
In this very room, with all due respect to the 10 Commandments,
No, it's
the
important.
Super Bowl is happening today, so some perspective.
At the halftime show, I heard you're going to read the 10 Commandments. That's
After we dive in from Lord.
There is another commandment.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not root for Kansas City.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There was a halachic question whether or not we're even allowed to watch a Super Bowl this year in Rochester, Buffalo area.
That's true.
On the one hand,
specifically, you have to do it because you have to not root for the Chiefs.
Exactly. All right, folks. So
thank you all. Thank you,
enjoy
Rabbi
the rest
Zohar.
of your day. Drive safely in the snow. All right, thank you. That was very, very good. Thank you. I think our people enjoyed your
do you want to send me the picture that you took?
Yeah, let's take one picture together
Let's
also
do
for whatever's sake. Who can take a photo of both of us, please? There we go. There you go. Great. So I'll send you all the photos.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question. One more question for you.
Oh, yeah. This is a very good.
I know.
I even had it in Israel. I actually have one in my basement that I don't use right now. This is an owl program. Owl. So these became very, very popular in Reform congregations. Maybe not only Reform. During COVID, they really allow you to have hybrid classes. You had maybe you don't know as much because you don't do that on Shabbat.
No, but during the week we do it.
So this really works wonders. It does. It has 360 and it captures the entire room with the microphone and the camera. Focuses on whatever seat. So it doesn't work as well as these large rooms. Actually, it does.
So we'll amplify that
because it's just not strong enough to take part of the room. So then, but in most study sessions, like they're around the table, or if you have even board meetings, or we do almost all of many of our board meetings and our committees are hybrid. So that people see, we had 20 people on Zoom, so it allows for people to just put it in Maryland. A little over, we just bought 2 because so it was I think $1,200.
Okay.
It's not, you know.
Yeah, that's money. That's not like
It's not like the Ten Commandments. It's not free. You know, but we'll give you a discount. Right? So yeah, so that's it's really helps because then you put a screen and everybody can kind of like be in the same room.
Yeah, I never seen it.
And I get 12% of it. So yeah, it's a worthwhile investment. It's kind of easy to handle. Yeah.
Nice.
Very good. So,
Just for that, thank you for inviting me. This is really nice.
Yeah, yeah. And I think our people, you can see from their questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So everything good otherwise?
Thank God. Yeah, getting over a cold, but otherwise, you know.
I was in DC this week.
Or
Well, I was invited.
And then.
okay.